us. How wonderful and...
Hello again, and welcome to the Polytunnel, where it's beautifully warm in here, if rather chilly outside, so this is the place to be. Do you have a special place where you like to go? To be quiet or still, to ponder or to pray perhaps? We can learn amazing things in stillness and in quiet. And before I get back to my Polytunnel, do you remember the last solar eclipse we had in the UK? It was about 20 years ago now, and someone was telling me about their experience of the solar eclipse and how it revealed to him more than he had expected. And he sat on his blanket waiting for things to happen, and others joined him with their blankets and chairs, and until numerous groups were dotted around, all waiting for things to happen. The sky was overcast for the event, if you remember, and while most people decided to call it a day, this person remained and waited to see what might happen. And then the temperature suddenly dropped, and an indication that the eclipse was happening, and the sky grew dark. And he sat watching, and then suddenly he realized he was surrounded by a small cloud of flying insects. And initially he batted them away, but they persisted and kept coming back. And this person realized why this was so. The drop in temperature prompted these little critters to find some warmth. And of course, this person, still on his mat waiting for the eclipse, provided it for them. Through these tiny insects, the dependency and unity of creation was demonstrated. And instead of waving them away, he succumbed and placed himself at the service of these insects, albeit briefly. And as he watched these tiny winged creatures dance in front of him, he was beginning to appreciate them as friend and not foe. And that sense that all creation is wonderfully and fearfully made by God and dependent on each other. By remaining still and staying in one place, this truth was revealed. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46 verse 10. You know, sometimes great truths and insights come when we are still before God. We don't have to chase after God, because he comes to us wherever we are. Jesus knew and valued the importance of this truth, and we know from the accounts in the Gospels where Jesus retreats to a hilltop or to the desert or to a place where he could be alone. This is something valued by people of all faiths across the world. Words have their place, and silence too. And I was talking recently to someone who works as a counsellor, and she reminded me that in the practice of counselling, the imperative is to listen and to be attentive to the other person, to be still and resist comment or interruption, a practice we could perhaps well do to import into our prayer life and our spiritual life in general. This was demonstrated powerfully and poignantly to me many years ago, before I was ordained. A 10-year-old child and a member of a church family sadly died following an anaphylactic fit. The priest at the time was elderly and beginning to sit lightly on the latest diocesan initiative. Nevertheless, he visited the family several times following this tragic event. And the bereaved mother was asked, and what did the vicar say to you? Although he was with them some time, she reported that in fact he said very little. However, his presence and simply being there was appreciated most. And sometimes it's simply being with people and hearing them that is healing. As well as speaking with each other, there is a a very real place for attentive listening. This runs counter to how we live today, doesn't it? Especially if you're in the midst of raising a family or chasing a career. And I believe a patiently listening church is a truly serving church, and something Christians could consider offering their communities in this post-pandemic era. God loves to hear from us, and miraculously knows of our need even before we ask. And so very often the graces God wishes to grant us come in those times of silence before God. Something this person who watched the solar eclipse experienced sitting on his blanket and awaiting the eclipse. The psalmist too, all those years ago, recognized the importance of being still before God, because it was a sure way of getting to know God better. And so finally, from the workshop, some words from the wonderfully moving hymn, Be Still My Soul. Be still, my soul. The Lord is on thy side. Bear patiently the cross of grief or pain. Leave to thy God to order and provide. In every change he faithful will remain. Be still, my soul. Thy best, thy heavenly friend, through thorny ways leads to a joyful end.
In my wrestling and in my doubts, in my failures, you won't walk out. Your great love will lead me through. You are the peace in my troubled sea. Whoa, you are the peace in my troubled sea. In the silence, you won't let go. In the questions, your truth will hold. Your great love will lead me through. You are the peace in my troubled sea. Whoa, you are the peace in my troubled sea. My lighthouse, shining in the darkness, I will follow you. Oh, my lighthouse, I will trust the promise. You will carry me safe to shore. Oh,